Faith can feel like hearts and butterflies until someone lights a match and burns it all to the ground. Welcome to the Burning Butterflies podcast.
The sad thing is that there's abuse of every kind within the church. But the spiritual abuse is the stuff that just
What's a place there shouldn't be abuse? Like, there just shouldn't be abuse in a place that claims Jesus.
Well, it ruins your soul. If you're new here, we suggest listening to our prologue episode first. This is the story of two women's journey through spiritual abuse and escaping from toxic church culture while finding hope in Christ.
Sometimes it's just the facts, and if you get offended by it, that's a you issue. And if we can't be mature enough to have these conversations, even if some of the topics are difficult, then shame on us.
So, welcome back.
Welcome to the adventure. The insanity adventure. So if you remember the last time that we were in my story, I painted a picture of context of, Froggy was painting himself to be Mr. Wonderful. And he was also, filling my ego with how I'm this ideal perfect woman for him.
You both acknowledge you made mistakes in the past, but we're here to move forward and do it right, do it God's way.
Right. And it's like, it's finally, I think everybody, I don't know, maybe everybody doesn't experience this, of like that you just feel like all the things that you've wanted and the story in your head of how it's going to be is finally coming true.
Yeah.
Like after all of the garbage, you finally met your perfect person and you're going to live happily ever after. Within 6 months, enough things have started to happen that I end up boarding myself up in my house. And so we are like August, September, maybe even the beginning of the school year.
So like what led up to like...
I talked about in my origin story how my first husband wrapped a phone cord around my throat. And I'd never dealt with that.
Yeah.
So enough things had started to transpire in my home that, and like I said, 6 months. I mean, that was quick.
Yeah.
And we're going from like, oh, I told you I don't smoke pot anymore, to having a joint on our honeymoon, to like things are getting broken. We're punching holes in walls. We're breaking doors. We're screaming. We're yelling. We're saying the most horrible things. And it's directed all at me. And I'm being told now all those things that were wonderful about me are now the worst possible qualities that a woman could have. And the first therapist that I went to after we separated, I said, I feel like I fell into a pit and I've been trying to claw my way out of that pit for 9 years. And so the rest of my story over the course of
the rest of this podcast
is going to be me attempting to claw my way out of the pit. So diving into, after the wedding day, like when did the wheels start coming off of the bus? As soon as the bus door closed, the wheels started coming off.
So how was that like coming back? Like, because you kind of just accepted that this was a celebration. We're just blowing off steam. We're celebrating the fact that we're married. It's not a big deal.
That was like the first little unraveling, but like then the rest of the time, that we were on our honeymoon and we came back, like everything was fine. And then there would be another little incident. And so the next incidents started within, like a couple of weeks. He moves in and the next step is going to be, because now he has a stable place to live. He's married. He can now have his kids over on a regular basis, and he can get back to his parenting plan from his previous divorce.
He hadn't been having
regular visits. He had been, he had them and he brought them to church and like he did see his kids, but there wasn't because he didn't have a
A regular
regular
residence.
residence. And then he was at his parents' house when I met him. So, I mean, they would come over there. So he was getting there. He was having his visitation, but having the like every other weekend
Yeah.
and these specific holidays, he could finally get back to that plan, which we were all on board with. But his idea of how that was going to look and everybody else's idea of how that was going to look were two totally different ideas. And so you have a man who has partial custody of his kids. They're going to be there maybe 4 days out of the month. You know, when you're talking every other weekend, specific holidays, we need to make accommodation for them. And that's all great. I have 5 kids, you know, and I have a house that was specifically bought for me and 5 kids in that idea.
And
of
you
like,
had lived there for a while.
yeah, I've been there for, I mean, maybe 2 years at that point.
Yeah. But that's long enough.
So
that
we're
the
established
yeah.
kids. I mean, the house was bought for them to have, you know, rooms and they're not sharing. My kids aren't sharing rooms at this point. The little ones, I think there's enough room for everybody.
Yeah.
And so looking at it and being like, okay, we need to accommodate 2 more kids on a part-time basis. What is that going to look like? To me, it's like grouping the kids. We have daughters that are very similar
age. It worked out almost perfect. Yeah. Like your kids and genders are the same. Yeah.
So he has a daughter who's right around the age as my like oldest daughter. And then I have the 2 little girls. And so the 2 little girls shared a room. And then I'm thinking, okay, we got the teenagers, the preteen
the 2
girls,
big girls can share a room.
and they can share a room. And then he has a son and I have 2 boys. And at that time they were all in the basement. And so they had their bedrooms down there. They had a gaming room, you know, the boy zone. And so it would be so easy to incorporate that.
Yeah.
His idea was that his kids were going to have their own rooms and this was going to be their house, even though they were only there like 4 days a month, which I can appreciate your heart. Like there's nothing wrong with it. I want to support that.
Yeah.
Like I think that you want to be a great dad. You're ready to get back on track. You can finally prove to your ex-wife that you're stable and secure. And I'm all about it. But we cross a line when you want to kick my kids out of their room and inconvenience them to the point of squishing them like all in these little 10 by 10 rooms that are in houses, right? And so that I can have a bedroom that sits empty, you know, 26 days of the month.
Yeah.
So that your kid could have their own room. And I thought that was too far. And so that became an argument.
Because was it ever like, okay, I don't see it going that way. You see it going that way. What are some compromises? Like, was it ever that kind of a conversation?
This is what he would say, like, this is what we're doing. And I'd be like, well, no, let's do this or whatever.
Yeah.
That started like World War III. There was no adult conversation. As soon as I didn't agree, there's fighting, there's yelling, there's, you know, temper tantrums and fit throwing and all of this.
By him, not your children.
Not the children, by him.
Yeah.
And it's very textbook typical of narcissistic behavior is that they will do whatever they need to do and go to whatever the level they need to go to get you to do what they want to do. And all of a sudden, I was being a horrible stepmom. How dare I? I'm opinionated. I'm
emasculating him.
Yes. Like it was full blown because I didn't agree with you. Now I'm a horrible person.
So it was a flip of a switch. Like you went from
Jekyll and Hyde. I'm great. I'm wonderful.
You are
I'm
my
smart. I'm
Disney
intelligent.
princess that I have been waiting for. And now you are Maleficent.
And how dare you have a brain and an opinion and think anything? It doesn't matter. That makes you controlling. That makes you emasculating. That makes you dominating. You always have to have your way. But it was always a battle, always a battle, always a battle. And then that battle turned into my kids were wrong. Like it would be like, your kids don't deserve their own spaces. They don't deserve their own space. Like what they were always the bad guy and always the enemy. And then he was just trying to be a good dad, which I can appreciate. But I mean, to the level of toxicity that it's like our whole lives in our house had to be circled around him and his kids.
Yeah.
And everything we did to the point of where there was an empty bedroom in my basement because my son wasn't good enough to have a bedroom so that his son could have a bedroom 4 days a month. And it caused, you don't think that's the problem with kids?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't blame my kids, honestly, for being like, what's going on? This man comes in, turns our house upside down. Then he brings his kids in the house and they get all this preferred treatment. They can do nothing wrong. They never get in trouble. Like if his kids were upset about anything in the house, their feelings were valid. My kids' feelings were not. We had to cater to like every little thing. And kids learn how to manipulate
Oh, yeah.
the
On both
system
sides. Yeah,
on both sides. Oh
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then now you have kids manipulating each other because this kid's mad at that kid because, you're manipulating this parent. So I have to manipulate this parent right back. And,
Yeah.
it was a crazy mess. And at the end of the day, it was always a crazy mess. And what you really learned was just while they're there, like my whole family would shut down
Yeah.
and that was it.
We just got to make it through these 4 days.
Yeah. Like while they're there,
Yeah.
and it's like, and then we would just go and do all of our stuff when they weren't there because I just left it to him. I'm like, they're your kids. They're here. You plan,
Yeah.
and I'll plan with my kids while they're not here.
So through this time, was Tom and Charlotte aware of the struggles that were going on? Like in the home and between the kids and
Oh, yeah. I mean, like when everybody was chalking it up to like step family,
yeah.
we were given a book about, was actually a really good book. I can't remember the name of the book, but the philosophy was that step families are like crock pot cooking. Some people in the step family are carrots, some are potatoes. They soften quickly. Others soften like, the carrots are the
Yeah.
last to soften. You don't put all the people in a blender and turn it on. You put all the people in a crock pot and they simmer. And so,
And you're trying to live the Brady Bunch dream. You're trying to do it the right way.
Yeah.
You're trying to do it God's way. And
yeah, absolutely. I was working as a personal trainer. So that's the only way that I was working outside of the house at that time, which was okay because it was like part-time. And so like we were really going for this, like, this is the 1950s mindset.
wife stays home.
He wanted to go to work.
Yep.
He wanted to come home and the kids are cleaned and bathed and quiet
Yeah.
and dinner's on the table.
This is the ideal Christian
Yes,
household.
this is how your house should look like every other
Yes.
Christian household. And so he had started working for a family that also attended the church. And I ended up staying home. And something else I participated in was like community theater. And so I am assistant directing and performing in a play for the community. And I remember I asked permission. Is it okay if I participate in this community theater event? And he was like, yeah, baby, you do whatever you want. Don't tell me I can do whatever I want. You're not going to mean it. But yeah,
Yeah.
like, so he gave
you permission.
permission. I want to throw up when I say these things.
No,
I'm sorry,
it's-
but he gave me permission to participate in this play, which that ended up being a problem. And we ended up fighting about that because you can't go off and do something that you're good at and be great
And
because
have,
it takes away from me.
and have people give you accolades.
Yeah.
And that takes you out of the
And
home.
you're
and-
not giving me attention.
Yep.
But like, here's the insanity. Not only did I ask permission, I outlined what it means. Like I
will be out of the home.
Here's what I want you
Yeah.
to know. I want to participate in this production. This is what it means. There is going to be weekly rehearsals, but before the play, there's going to be like day in and day out, like
Yeah.
a good solid 2 weeks
Yeah.
that I will not be around. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. It's fine. You do what you want. Like I'm make my wife happy. You go do your theater self, right?
Because we had the
But
mask
when I'm
on.
gone for 2 weeks, it's a problem. And all we did was fight and fight and fight. And and all he was a jerk about it. Like, where are you going? What theater party? Oh, you have to do theater again. Like, it just became, what about me? What about me? What about me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we fought over everything. The kids' sleeping arrangement. We fought over the play. We fought over everything. Everything we fought over. Me having a job, me not having a job. Because then when I didn't have a job, it was, you need to get a job.
Yeah. We have no money
So-
because it's not like Froggy was going out and trying to find the highest paying job he could get in order to provide for his family and all of these things.
Right.
And this is where the narrative of Melissa and all her kids,
Yes.
she just has all these kids.
Yeah.
That is what Tom would start to say.
Yeah.
Again, not in public,
No.
not from
In
stage,
the inner circle.
but in the inner circle
Right.
conversations.
And so, Froggy had gotten that job with the people at the church, but then he also lost that job. And this wasn't the first time that he worked with them. This was the second time that he worked with them. So he had worked with them before, and then they were giving him another chance to work with them again.
So the first time it didn't end well.
Didn't end well. Second time it didn't end well. The third time it didn't end well. But that's years later. And so I feel like, Tom was very involved in curating a lot of this, where it would
Oh,
be
yeah.
like, you need to have a job, you need to do this, you need to do that.
Well,
she
and
needs to do this.
he was going to the people in the church. I mean, like, I really wish Froggy
Yeah.
would
like he'll be good. He needs a
Yeah.
job. He needs to, because he's
Mhm.
worked a lot with people in the church. Like
Yep.
he's had a lot of those jobs. And so he starts out when we're married, he's working for one job. By the end of the year, he's got another job with some friends of his that he's been connected with, which he's worked for also 3 times over the years. But this is really where like the insanity really starts. It starts with the fighting over the kids. And now Mr. Perfect, Mr. Wonderful, and I'm going to spew about how you're so amazing. Now, all of those qualities, you're so
Yeah.
smart and you're really creative and you're independent. Now, all of a sudden, I'm, controlling,
Yeah.
have to have my own way. I'm emasculating. No wonder why my first husband tried to strangle me, things like that. Like,
So
I mean,
everything that was wonderful and perfect about you.
Yeah. Is
is
now being used against me. And I feel like the play, when I went out and did that, that was a big turning point. Within the first 6 months, it's not a long length of time, but the cracks in the mask and the mask coming off and the little things, the unraveling, like things just started from day one. They started to unravel. And what looked like some anger issues turned into be like a nightmare. And at this time, like we're trying to work through his anger issues, within the first, few months, there's definitely anger issues. We're working on it. Oh, yep, did it again, and you want to give grace to people and
and you're trying so hard to do it right. And you both have acknowledged there's been problems in the past and you're just trying to do it right. And that takes time. And you have this rhetoric, this constant message being given to you at church that it's hard to break away from the patterns of the world. And it's hard to, renew your mind. And it's a daily thing. And you have to daily, and you shouldn't keep records of wrongs of people. And,
right.
And
don't focus on the bad. You have to focus on God
moving
and focus on
forward
what
and
you're
having
doing.
forgiveness and all of these things.
We did. So, but like legitimately, we did see wise counsel. That wise counsel came in the form of a couple weekly meetings with Pastor Tom, but which now in hindsight is like, okay, that might not have been exactly what.
Well, because Tom
we should have done.
Tom says something to you before you're married. When he sits you down and he asks if you are aware.
So we're having these weekly meetings with Pastor Tom, and he is asking all kinds of questions about like, what are you guys going to do? Like, it's like an interview or like,
premarital counseling.
Yeah, you could call it that, but this is not how I would think. Maybe this is how premarital, I don't know. I never had premarital counseling before. So maybe this is how it goes. But this was definitely like an application process, like a job interview.
Mhm.
And I just got done with that study. So I had all the right answers.
Mhm.
But so through this process of this wise counsel, premarital counseling, whatever you want to call it, something that is brought up is Pastor Tom says, well, are you aware that Froggy has anger issues? And mind you, Froggy is sitting there in the room at this time. And this is what gets brought up. And of course he answers, yes, I told him. Like, okay, well, yes, he told me. And of course, then I elaborate because, I'm good at that.
Yeah.
Like, yes,
This is what he told me.
we've
Yeah.
talked about this and we understand that, like, I'm like, I struggled with anger issues and I've overcome those.
So when Froggy told you about his anger issues,
Yeah.
when he tells Tom, like, "Oh, I told her about this," is he just like, "I sometimes get mad and yell.
Yeah. So
I've thrown things, like, I've had a bad past." Like, just kind of like at what level did
I don't
he played that off
honestly
to you?
don't think that he had to. I think that he recognized that I understood what anger issues are. Actually, I think I described my anger issues. Oh, I did this. Oh, you have anger issues? I've had anger issues. I don't think he ever told me anything.
So he never described, he
No,
just
I think that
he
I
mirrored
eat out on it.
he mirrored your
He mirrored
response.
my response where I was
Okay.
like, oh, I understand. I've thrown things, you
Okay.
know. He probably said he punched a wall. Like, what teenage boy hasn't punched a wall, right? He told me a story. His mom had to put a frame over the wall because he put a hole in the wall or whatever. And then he had to go back and drywall it and fix it, right? He made amends. And so, but I think most of it was just mirroring anything that I brought up. You want to talk about anger issues? Well, that's not an accurate. That isn't
Yeah.
accurate. This is not anger issues.
And this is all stuff that Tom knew,
Tom has known since Froggy was in high school that this was what he
that
thinks.
this was abusive.
This is not.
So when all
If
of this
you get
was
mad and I'm trying to leave the conversation and you will not leave me alone and you are following me around the house and I go to shut a door and you break the door, that's not anger issues. You tear the door off the hinges because I'm trying to get away from you and I can't escape. So then I go to another door. You take that door down.
yeah.
Like I've had doors in my house replaced like 3 times in the time that we were married.
So are you coming to the realization that like this is much more than anger?
Yeah.
This
Have
is
I not only come to the realization of like, oh crap, what did I do?
yeah.
And I come to the realization that like, this is bad.
Yeah.
This is really, really bad. I go into this panic, isolation, like trauma response. Because if you remember correctly, I brought it up earlier that my first husband had
Yeah.
tried to strangle me. I have not dealt with that trauma.
Yeah. You haven't gone to therapy or worked through any
as
of
I know now, I haven't really dealt with much of my trauma, just coped really well, I guess.
Yeah.
Just worked well around it. And so this all comes to a head of like, this is not okay. So I spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of it's really foggy. I don't remember all the details. I don't know how the whole incident ended. I do know that he left the house for like a week. And I do know that I boarded myself up in my house. I put sheets over the windows. The kids laugh about it.
Do you remember that time that mom put the sheets over the windows? Yeah, we all had to hide in the basement if anybody came to the door and then they like look at me and I'm like, I'm sorry. I lost my mind.
So I did. I spiraled. Like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know what to.
So when he left, where did he go? Did he go back to
his
Tom and
parents.
Charlotte?
Yeah, he went to his parents' house. And he was there. I want to say it was like a week. A couple of church ladies came to the door, and my kids were so good at reading. They had to go see who was at the door, and they were like, ladies from church. So I opened the door, and they came in, and were like, "What is going on?" And one of the ladies, and she had some history with Froggy. Like she has kids the same age, and her kids and Froggy have run around in the same circles. in the past. And
So she was full on aware.
she's full on aware. Like, and if she didn't know like all the details, she's at least like aware enough, and she's dealt with her own garbage and stuff in life that she's like, yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
I get it. I totally understand. And not just in a like, I haven't walked this walk. Like she's walked the walk.
Yeah. Well, so I think it's important to note, like, so at this point, it is being talked about in not like the public church, but you have like the small church, the in crowd, that
Yeah, the inner circle.
the inner circle, people who are serving, people who are going to leadership meetings and in the office and things like that. And it's in those inner circle times where it's being discussed. And so it was decided that the two church ladies were going to go to your house. And this is the beginning of Melissa is crazy. Melissa is crazy. Melissa is flaky. We can't.
She's a lady that boarded herself up in her house for a week.
Yeah.
Well, and it's so interesting because like the way I have it divided up in my mind, honestly, is like the first year of marriage versus like, I know by 6 months, I really want to say this was in like the first 6 months that I was here, but I think, and I could be wrong, but I feel like the incident that happened is the one where I ended up breaking a window on my house. And it was the first time that he tried to physically assault me, because the thing about like narcissists is they will do whatever they need to do to get what they want. So if they can use words, they'll use words. If their words don't work, they'll throw a fit. If their fit doesn't work, they will physically intimidate. If the physical intimidation doesn't work, then they will physically assault. If the physical assault doesn't work, and this is why it's so important to understand that you are always in, like, the fear for your life is real, and you're always in that place where you just don't know how far they're going to go. And so but you also learn really quick to conform quickly, because
It's going to escalate if you don't.
where it's going.
Yeah.
And you know that there is no finality except for like they will go as far as killing you. Like there's no doubt about it. Like if you resist enough, like I've had my life threatened enough and physical things done to take my life in this relationship that I know, like, I had to be prepared that it could go there. And the reason why I know is because I would push far enough to see how, like, and I wasn't doing it on purpose, but I was so adamant, and then he would push and push and push to the point where it would take threatening my life in a real situation for me to be like, okay, you're right, or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, they don't need to go there. Turn around. That was too far.
Yeah.
But I do believe that the incident that happened that made me lock up my windows was the first time he tried to physically assault me. And I ended up throwing a coffee cup at his head, and he ducked, and it went through the window that was behind him. And I was so mad. And I broke, like, and that window would then be the bane of my existence, because his abuse was okay because I broke a window. That's not so bad, but you broke a window.
Yeah.
Oh, I broke that. You broke a window. Right. So it ended up being like,
It was you could never say anything about the things he'd broken your home.
yes, because I broke a window.
Yeah. One time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was so mad. I was so mad. I threw that coffee cup, and he looked at me like, you almost killed me. And I was like, why did you duck? Because he was like, that would have hit it. I would have clocked it. I would have knocked him out. I threw that coffee cup so hard. And I was like, yeah, why'd you duck? Like, I was so mad. I was like, I wish you hadn't ducked.
Yeah.
And there were many times over the years that I was like, why'd you duck? If you hadn't ducked, we wouldn't be here today. Like, I also did not want to go to jail for murder, but I mean, like.
So she comes over and she kind of like talks you through and everything. So then you're just kind of like, okay, we're fine.
That's good. Like, we have the whole conversation. I lay it out. This is what I'm going through, starting with. Okay. So from that point on, she would come over, and I started building a relationship with her and a friendship with her. And like I would meet with her often, but it was like, are we good? We're good. Awesome. Tear the windows down, right back to life. Let's go.
Okay. And then you let Froggy back in.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, everything went like it went from one day, like, good, we got some like adjustment phase, things going on. We're starting to see the cracks in the mask to the peak of like complete insanity. And then I dive down that crazy spiral. And then the church ladies come over and then life goes back to normal. And like it never happened.
Did he say anything when he came back?
No,
Like, hey, I'm sorry.
no.
Just, I'm back and we're just gonna.
Yeah, we're good. Like there's no,
So we're just gonna pretend it didn't
we're just
happen.
gonna pretend it didn't happen.
'Kay.
And we're gonna move on. Like, right? Okay, oops, oops. Let's continue on. We put our best foot forward. And, during this time was the men are doing this the Bible study where they signed the contracts.
Oh yeah, because the
and
movie Courageous had come out, and
yeah,
there can't be anything that is popular in Christian pop culture that Come As You Are doesn't take and put their own spin on and make it their own thing. And so it was decided that we were all going to watch the movie Courageous as a church, even though pretty much everyone in the church had gone and seen it in the theaters. Once it came out on DVD or whatever, then we all watched it as a church. And then like a week later, all of the men, they took like the paper that all the men signed in the movie,
yeah,
the little covenant little thing that
Yeah.
they do. And we did a big giant thing in I laugh because being someone who takes pictures and does event planning stuff and things like that, like, we're going to make this special. We're going to make this awesome, right? But the men did all of it and the women didn't do anything. And how they made it special and nice was everyone dressed up, but we took all the chairs in the sanctuary and stacked them up to the side. So in all the pictures, you just have stacked chairs behind everyone.
yeah,
And we have the tables that they went and got from the children's ministry area that are colored on with marker and everything. And we don't put a tablecloth down. We don't clean the tables. Like, it's just a white plastic 6-foot table.
Just a side note.
Like,
It was an
but
interesting event.
Like, it was ridiculous.
I 100% and fully believed that by him signing that paper, like that was some sort of like magic
That was going to change it.
seal of like,
Well, because that's what happened in the movie.
this is like this legally binding, spiritually binding, like you cannot break this covenant now. Like that's how I felt in that moment.
Yeah.
Like, cause it was like, we're back on track. Everything's good.
So, like, how did he behave after that? Like, did he revert back to that, like, I'm trying to be your perfect person?
Yeah. Yeah. Like this is a constant cycle.
Well, I think it's important for everyone to understand that no one in the church knew Froggy was behaving this way.
Right. His story has been so well covered up
Yes.
by his family and his parents.
So when you have the pastor and the pastor's wife actively covering what their son is doing.
Right. And I'm the problem.
Yes. And so
Just like every other woman that he's been in a relationship with has been the problem.
And so you think about it, I shared in my last episode about, my husband was not faithful and how Tom reacted to that and was like, well, it's fine. You have to forgive yourself. You have to move on. And how Charlotte reacted to me, questioning me if I was doing what I needed to do as a wife. So now they have no skin in our game other than to keep us under control and active in the church. You are married to their son.
Right.
So I can only imagine
Well,
how their involvement in all of this was just so detrimental mentally to you.
And I really felt like in the very beginning, like the advice that I was getting versus the advice that he was getting, I really felt like they were working for us. Like I wasn't in any of the private conversations that Froggy would have had with his dad. But in my mind, I assumed that they were conversations that were helping him
Yeah, it was like, you've got to get your
and
act together.
holding
You've
him
got,
accountable.
yeah, you would think.
You would think. I doubt that that's what they were now.
Yeah.
But I know the conversations that I was having, it started out less direct but the whole thing was like I've said before, I was told if you just behaved, these things wouldn't be happening. Because there was a point where, I mean, we're talking, it was a year and a half. It might have even been almost 2 years after we separated when I realized that the people that I was going to for advice and help in my situation were the same people that were keeping me in my situation.
Yeah.
Like there was no helping me get out. They were helping me, but they weren't helping me get out. They
Yeah.
were helping me keep my mouth shut and stay.
Yeah.
And so that was an eye-opening moment, but it was not, like I'm really good at it's okay. Everything's okay. I'm going to make the best out of every situation, and be on adventure and have fun. And so, but no, looking back and understanding that this person who painted themselves to be Mr. Wonderful, the reality is we have absolutely nothing in common. And I feel like understanding that it's not like a spoiler alert or whatever, because I think part of going back and telling a story and trying to not have the looking back,
Yeah.
like view is very difficult. Like,
Yeah.
but when you understand that I didn't know these things at that time, and
Yeah.
then understanding that the reality is that we have absolutely nothing in common and our paths would have never crossed if I had never stepped foot in that church.
Yeah.
Ever. There's nothing, absolutely nothing that we would run in the same circles, even if he was making all the right choices. Like, even if he was not trying to live the lifestyle that he's trying to live, there's nothing.
Yeah.
That's mind blowing to me. Like, not even like how do you be married to somebody for 9 years? Because I made up a fictitious person in my head who it's like he painted this picture of Mr. Wonderful and I just made him Mr. Wonderful in my mind.
Yeah. And as wonderful as he was when things were good, it wasn't real.
It wasn't real. And the person that I had in my head was never real. And then you would go through cycles of for 2 weeks, you would try to be that person, but then you'd have to revert. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So not enough payout. So I believed you. And then that's the bottom line is I believed you. And then I could never figure out why you weren't that person ever again.
Burning Butterflies is a listener-supported podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing supporters on Patreon.
Follow the link in our show notes to learn how you can become a Patreon supporter too. Supporters get exclusive access to bonus content each month, including outtakes, cut content, and supporter-only episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on your listening platform.
Burning Butterflies is a production of Asha Media. Thank you for listening.